Cool. Okay, for the last 7 minutes, I've been watching this video of these people trying to pull something out of a turtle's nose. They've got these pliers, there's people grabbing it, it's super bloody. Oh no, they've got it. Oh, okay. Super gross, long, old straw. And the turtle is just covered in blood. And this boat's covered in blood. And it's just so disgusting and sad. Oh God. Oh, that's it.
That was the sound of our audio producer, Emily, reacting to a now famous video of a turtle getting a straw pulled out of its nose. As of this moment, it has about 35 million views on YouTube, and it was the genesis for what is now a global straw ban movement. It's pretty disgusting. After watching this video, most would agree that we should ban plastic straws or at least try and do something about them. And that's just what has happened. These global bans of straw movements are occurring everywhere. Are they good? Are they bad? What will we replace straws with? What are countries and companies doing? Does banning straws really stop the worst of plastic pollution or help the environment? Most importantly, what do we do when the world has finally reached the last straw? Hi, I'm Nature Nate, and this is Waste Not, Why Not, a podcast where we talk about how not to save the environment. I'm an environmental researcher based in Taiwan, working on energy, ocean, and waste issues. On today's episode, we're going to talk about straws. To answer those questions, first we need to understand this. How did the straw get into the turtle's nose? And how did it go from your boba tea into the sea? Before we get into anything, I want to make it crystal clear that what we're talking about here is the mass consumption of plastic straws. There is a time and a place for certain people who need to use plastic straws, especially for those who might have a medical condition. Okay, back to plastic straws. Straws are a low-value plastic, and that low-value plastic tends to end up on the beach because you can't recycle it. A plastic bottle made from PET could be turned into a textile or something useful. However, a plastic straw, once it touches your lips, no one else is going to want to use that. Straws are hard to collect, and almost 100% of the time, they are contaminated with food waste. Remember, you can't recycle stuff that's contaminated with food. It was inevitable that at some point a straw was going to end up in a turtle's nose. It's like a quantum law. Given enough time, we will find straws in turtles' noses. We pull car tires out of whales, six-packs out of dolphins. The list goes on. While some straws in the ocean are from people littering on the beach, we know who you are. Most are coming from our own waste management system. Straws slip through the cracks, probably literally. We don't have to count how many straws are trashed on a beach to know that every time you're there, you'll inevitably see plastic trash. We do have vague guesses though. You might have heard one study that says people in the US use an estimated 500 million straws per day. But that study was published by a company in India that makes eco-friendly straw alternatives. Strawlternatives. So it's in their interest to make the problem seem huge. A study that was conducted and peer-reviewed by actual scientists estimates that 8 billion straws pollute the world's beaches today. But at the end of the day, the problem isn't necessarily the straw on the beach. It's that they were even created in the first place. So, what's the problem with plastic straws? Well, first, with the production of plastic straws, we need to drill for oil. Then we need to take that oil, refine it, crack it, we need to process it. That creates air and water pollution at every one of those stages. Then we need to turn those into plastic pellets. We take those pellets to a factory. Then at the factory, we need to extrude those out into straws. And then in straw form, they get some dyes, additives, packaging. Then they have to be transported and sent to a store. At each one of those stages in its production, a straw is causing damage to the environment. It's not just the straw on the beach, it's the straw as it's born that hurts the earth. The International Coastal Cleanup Report from 2018, which we've linked in the show notes if you have a fetish for plastic pollution numbers like I do, found that straws and stirrers are the 7th most common item found in cleanups, with about 643,000 collected on just one cleanup day. If we stack those end to end, you would need to drive an hour to reach the other side. Wow, that's a lot. But I want to remind you that the straw on the beach is just the visible symptom of the pollution. It's not the bulk of the damage. Those 643,000 straws, they created environmental harm at every stage of their life cycle. They just happen to be picked up on a beach at the end of the day. But people are eager to ban them anyway because they are such a visual burden. There are a couple of different ways we can approach this structurally, but bans do have a place. They can help. Within that context, what are governments doing? Well, so far, fewer than 30 countries in the world have passed straw ban legislations. Taipei, Taiwan, where this show is recorded, was one of the first ones, and that ban is rolling out on July 1st. It's going to cover 4 different sectors to start with: department stores, fast food chain stores, schools, and government entities. This will cover about 8,000 locations nationwide. How are they going to enforce this ban? Well, through fines and written warnings in the beginning. Fines will go between $40 and $200 US. Now, if this is per straw, that's great, but more than likely it's just for each infraction. So we're not sure how this is going to play out yet. Again, the ban is launching in July with full implementation by 2025. Altogether, this is one of the farthest reaching national bans in the world. And this is a really big deal for a country that lives and dies by boba tea, which requires a straw to consume. So what's going to happen with packaging? How are entrepreneurs here going to adapt with this policy regulation? What will it do to boba? Is it the death of boba? Moving on to another cloudy city that I love, Seattle. Seattle was the first city in the US to ban plastic straws, and that started with a trial that began in 2018. Violators are hit with a $250 fine, but no fines have been given out yet. The city said that the first year is sort of a trial year. They're working with businesses to educate them on strawlternative. Also, there are exemptions for medical use, which is kind of funny if you think about it, that straws are going the opposite direction as cannabis. Good news, dear listener. This episode has some homework for you. Once you're done listening, go online and find out what your city or state or country is doing to ban plastic straws or single-use plastics. Go on to our Facebook or our Twitter, leave us a comment, at us, and tell us what they are doing. Let's talk about what the governments of the future, companies, are doing to lead the change. Let's start with McDonald's, one of the largest companies. McDonald's in Taiwan and also McDonald's in the UK and Ireland have already began phasing out straws. But this is because these places already have legislation for straw bans. So, why then has McDonald's not just banned straws entirely throughout its operations? Let's come back to this question a bit later. In the meantime, one of the most famous companies to act first, globally, was Starbucks. They pushed for a worldwide straw ban in 2018, right as the movement was building. They came out with a new lid for cold drinks to replace straws. It looks a bit like a traditional lid for a hot drink, but it has a wider and steeper mouth. Essentially, it was a sippy cup. By doing this, Starbucks wanted to eliminate 1 billion plastic straws a year. Does this mean that Starbucks is personally responsible for 1 billion plastic straws globally? Probably. Some people, environmental denialists, thought that the new lid was actually worse for the environment because it used more plastic. This is not great, but it's also not necessarily bad. If you can keep the plastic together, it's easier to recycle and you're more likely to get a higher quality end product. It's also easier to separate. Straws and lids can come apart too easily and they can mix in with other types of plastics. Do these company bans add up to making a global difference? Shell came out with a report saying that they expected plastic consumption to decrease because of the Attenborough effect of these plastic straw bans. The IEA, International Energy Association, however, said that they expect plastic consumption to increase towards 2050 due to rising demand from low-income economies. If these bans were having an effect, then we would know because we would see these plastic companies publicly worrying about it, disclosing it as a risk. Either way, whether it's through companies or legislation, at some point the world is going to turn against plastic straws. The more interesting question is not then, how quickly will we get rid of plastic straws, but what will this strawlternative be? What will we do when the world has had its last straw? Plastic straw bans have also kickstarted a whole new industry of strawlternatives. Essentially, we see people turning to 3 alternatives: paper, metal, and glass. Paper is the mass-produced solution, and it's one of the worst alternatives. You heard me. Paper is not your friend. To understand why paper straws could be worse, let's look at how they're made, and then let's look at how paper bags stand up to plastic bags to extrapolate from there. First-time trees. That's right, many paper straws are made out of virgin trees. They come from tree farms, which have large environmental impacts as well, and they are not using recycled paper in packaging because many countries and cities have legislation banning the use of recycled materials in food contact packaging. You may have seen some organic paper straws as well, and that doesn't really matter either because you are still cutting down trees in a tree farm. How much pesticides they use does not really impact the total amount of energy and carbon they're emitting. Paper straws, like plastic straws, are also not recyclable. After use, they become really soggy, so you're not going to turn a paper straw back into a paper straw. You're just making more trash. We assume paper straws are better because paper biodegrades. Paper is renewable. Therefore, paper straws are the renewable alternative to plastic. Right? Right? Well, probably not. And I say probably because, to my knowledge, nobody has really done a full life cycle assessment on the impacts of paper straws. This is important for something like paper, where it actually has more of an environmental impact than you might think. Even if we don't have life cycle assessments yet for paper straws, we have many to draw from for paper bags. Numerous studies have compared paper and plastic bags. Pretty much overwhelmingly, you can look at any of those assessments and find that plastic has a much lower environmental impact than paper. Some studies claim that it's 9 times better to use a plastic bag for the environment than a paper one. Other studies found that you need to reuse a paper bag at least 3 times to equal the impact of a plastic bag. Does that sound feasible to you? And how could this even be possible? Paper is supposed to be the environmentally friendly alternative. Well, think about the process. For a paper bag, you have to grow a tree, cut down a tree, transport the tree, chop and chip the tree, pulp the tree, process that tree pulp into a secondary material, process that into a straw, then you have to process the straw, ship the straw, you also have to dye the straw, and keep in mind that a paper straw has to be significantly thicker than a plastic one so it doesn't break down when it enters your drink. Paper straws, by their very nature, require more materials to produce, as they have to be thick enough not to dissolve in water immediately. As an experiment, take some printer paper and try to drink from that. Go ahead, I will wait. The takeaway here is that one paper straw with a high degree of certainty has a larger environmental impact across its life cycle than a plastic straw. Plastic straws take much less energy and fewer resources to produce. They are more efficient. That's right. The number one alternative to straws at this moment, paper straws, are bad. I am in no way saying that plastic is sustainable. It's not. But rather that for certain applications, plastic has a lower environmental impact by unit of weight due to how efficient it is to produce. Now, that's for paper straws, which are disposable. Instead, let's talk about reusable. So 2 good alternatives that are reusable are metal and glass straws. The key takeaway here is that they are reusable. They're basically the same in a lot of ways. Metal is recyclable and easy to obtain from recycled sources, depending on the country laws, but it takes more energy to produce. Glass takes less energy to produce, and it can be made of recycled materials, although it also probably isn't. And it can break more easily, at least if you are a klutz like I am. Here in Taipei, we're starting to see restaurants and cafes switching to strawlternatives. Let's hear from one of those restaurants, Uchacha, on how they're making that transition happen.
I think the first month we used plastic straws, and I was seeing how many straws we were going through every day.
That's Mai Bach. She founded Uchacha, a vegan restaurant in downtown Taipei in 2013. Starting out as an indie shop, Mai began by selling juices, but since then it's become a full restaurant with 2 locations. It's the type of cozy cafe where you can sit in the afternoon, read a book, or maybe play some board games in their basement. They too tried using paper straws before eventually moving on to metal.
So the second option we went to very quickly was paper straws. People would sit with their drinks for 30 minutes and all of a sudden the straws were just non-functioning anymore.
When you had no straws, was there pushback from people, or was everyone?
For the takeout, if they really wanted it, we gave it to them because, you know, being in a consumer-centric service. So we had to kind of battle that. And so we had to find a solution that would appease them, but also make me not feel like a horrible person. I researched a few different materials. We thought about glass. And so I looked into bamboo and I looked into some other alternatives. We were looking at all packaging materials, all takeout materials.
So metal straws are what you went with?
Yes.
And then Taipei City has the ban. That ban didn't affect you at all, I imagine.
No. And also, it's not going to affect small businesses for a while. There's going to be a lot more oversight on the big companies first, the high volume usage. So there's still kind of this gray area as we transition that a lot of small businesses are going to have to figure out how to transition and what their alternative is going to be. Because a lot of small places, they're volume places, like a mom and pop shop, they're doing takeaway. They're going to have to figure out, okay, well, plastic straws cost this much, a stainless steel straw costs this much, and also takes manpower to wash. So there's a lot more cost involved with that, and plastic straws are dirt cheap. And so the oversight and for the ban to go into effect, it's going to take a while for like businesses to change on their own because it's going to cost them a lot.
At the end of the day, it isn't glass versus metal. It's that we want to eliminate single-use disposable items entirely. The real problem is therefore not paper or plastic, it's disposability. As long as we have any kind of single-use object, we will never really have a good environmental outcome. Paper, cut down trees, use more energy. Plastic, take the dice roll of ending up in a turtle's nose. What then can we do as individuals? Waste not your time with paper straws. Why not take real actions? First off, refuse all disposable items, especially straws. It takes being mindful, but this is the slow yet vocal and consistent form of revolution that leads to change. Some days, I feel like a monk. No straw, 不要习惯. No straw, 不要习惯. No straw, 不要习惯. No straw, 不要习惯. I'm just chanting this in restaurants and drink shops. What do you say in your country to refuse a straw? Write to us on social media and let us know. Next, rethink. Why do you even need a straw? Okay, here's my last bit of controversial advice. Don't worry so much about plastic straws. We have limited time and energy, especially emotional energy. Don't agonize or be rude to servers over half a gram of plastic. We all still drive in cars, fly, eat meat, and use air conditioning. We're just humans. You or me using just one straw is half a gram of plastic. Buying an umbrella, t-shirt, or taking a cab even once is far more damaging to the environment. And most of us do it without batting an eye. We are not personally responsible for all of this environmental violence. We are caught up in this system together and need to take care of ourselves and the planet. We need to work together and do what we can. Remember to refuse, rethink, re-equip, and also relax yourself. Because straw-induced anxiety might just be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I'm Nature Nate, and this has been the Waste Not, Why Not podcast, recorded in a foamy tube in a co-working space in Taipei, Taiwan. Do you have a question? Email your voice recordings to ask@wastenotwhynot.com. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever. Give us a good rating. Hit us up on social media. We are Waste Not Why Not on Facebook, or you can tweet at us at WasteNotPod on Twitter. This has been a Ghost Island media production recorded on a Yeti microphone provided by Blue. This episode was produced, edited by Emily Y. Wu, Emily Cardinelli, written by me, Nature Nate, and sound engineered by Emily Cardinelli. Original theme song by Chris Lowe. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.